Hello and welcome to the Rambly Movie Club, where each episode I try and watch some new movies and hopefully find some good ones. This episode is all about the movie Wallace and Gromit and the Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I have to remember to say were-rabbit and not werewolf. It's very hard to remember. Which is a movie from, I think it's like 2005? I should look this up before I started. It's a little bit older now. If you've never seen Wallace and Gromit, don't know what it's about. Wallace and Gromit is a series of movies where this guy and his dog who go on adventures, and it's all stop motion with these like clay figures. And this one is all about a giant were-rabbit that's terrorizing the town and eating everyone's vegetables. It's kind of fitting that I'm doing this just after I've done Kubo as well. Just another great stop motion movie you should go watch. And this is kind of the original stop motion movies of Wallace and Gromit. Studio that make Wallace and Gromit have done things like Chicken Run, and Wallace and Gromit. Shaun the Sheep's their most recent one they've been working on. A bit more animation than stop motion, but they've inspired a lot of people to go into stop motion. This is also a very British movie with lots of British words and jokes in it. So if you're not from the UK and you don't get some of the jokes, don't worry, like, they are very British. As always, there will be spoilers, but yeah, this movie's like 15 years old. It's a kid's movie. You can't really be spoiled for it. I wouldn't worry too much about that if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend going to watch it, but listening to this podcast before probably won't affect how much you enjoy the movie. Okay, so the movie starts with the iconic intro song, which I'm not going to sing because that would be awful. You don't want to hear my singing, but it's so catchy and gets stuck in your head forever. It's really good. It means it works. It's a good intro song, even if it is annoying to get out of your brain. We see a garden being broken into and someone avoiding the police. See Wallace and Gromit get woken up by an elaborate invention, and as a kid, these are the kind of things you dream of having with your friend. You know, like you'd imagine like all these crazy shoots, like get you out of bed and like bring you breakfast in bed and stuff like that. We also see the license plate of the car is Hop to It, which is funny. There's so many quick jokes in every scene, and I guess that's the benefit of stop motion, and that they had so much time to like pose the scenes and like get them just right and stuff like that. The stop motion holds up pretty well, I guess, because it is like photos and not CGI, like it's not animated or anything, so you can see like how well it's done. The other thing as well about the stop motion is this is kind of like the old way of doing it with plasticine that can be molded, and it kind of looks like clay, but yeah, it's plasticine. Now, like with things like Kubo, where it's all with like 3D printing and like having like different faces and stuff like that, it's much more complicated, whereas this was like the old fast and easy way of doing it. I say fast and easy, it still took months to film scenes and stuff, and took very careful precision. They get to save the garden from a big monster. It turns out to be a rabbit with a giant pumpkin. It's a great subversion of expectations for everyone, no matter how old you are. You see the whole town cheering them because they're all growing vegetables in their gardens, and this is what a lot of British towns were like in the 70s, like way before I was born. Some people still do this, but nowhere near as much. If you live in a town, we have these things called like allotments, which is basically like a garden for the community, and you can like get like a patch. It will be like 2 meters square, and then you can just plant whatever you want there. But yeah, it's definitely not as common as it used to be. We see Wallace and Gromit hanging out around the house. Wallace needs to lose weight, but wants to do it in his way with science. The original Wallace and Gromit came out in the 90s when new technology was taking off and the future was very exciting about what was possible. So lots of people saw themselves like Wallace as like, oh, maybe I can do this with technology, or maybe in 10 years time the technology will be here so I can do this thing. So it was like kind of a golden age of like imagining all these inventions and stuff. Wallace gets interrupted mid-process and gets asked to help the local rich lady, and there's a bit where he gets dragged into the air and there's like, I'll be with you in an hour, and this is great humour mocking the upper class in the UK. Wallace and Gromit try to help catch all the rabbits for her while the rich lord tries to shoot the rabbits, and of course Wallace is instantly in love. The only guns we really have in the UK are for hunting, and rich people are the ones most likely to do it, so this is actually quite fitting for his character. Wallace has the idea of brainwashing the rabbits to not eat vegetables. This appeals to every kid everywhere, with Wallace saying veg bad. Wallace causes the machine to go wrong and Gromit has to smash it. The light effect with like the lights that kind of like go through the air, it doesn't look like CGI. I would guess it's long exposure of a moving light, where they had the camera like constantly taking a photo for say like 30 seconds and they moved the light through in that pattern, because it looks very good still. Also, they call the rabbit Hutch, which is an awful name for a rabbit. We see everyone go to bed and all the rabbits are terrified of Hutch. This is a great setup for the twist later. We see the vicar tending to his vegetables and being followed into the church. Him looking in the greenhouse like a car is still funny. Not seeing the creature properly is very good as well, like how you only see like its foot and you hear it and you see like the outline. This is very much like the movie The American Werewolf in London, which does the same thing, but much scarier. And of course, when the vicar is confronted and he makes a cross out of courgettes, that's just hilarious too. We then see the beast go on a rampage and smashes everyone's crops, so everyone is angry, and then the town all gathers in their church to discuss what to do. The policeman lifting off his helmet to then see that his head's actually the same size as the helmet in shape. This is definitely what every kid imagines a police head to actually look like. Also, still one of my favourite lines ever in a movie is the policeman saying, "This was arson. Someone arson around." This is also an homage. This whole scene is an homage to Jaws when they're discussing on the beach how to deal with the shark. The two rich people then argue if they should kill the rabbit or not, because of course, how could poor people get by without them? Wallace and Gromit use a giant fake rabbit to try and seduce the rabbit, because of course that's the best way. The giant fake rabbit gets knocked off, so Wallace goes to get it while Gromit waits in the car. Gromit bumps into the were-rabbit. Watching it now, it makes sense that it's Wallace and Hutch was just a red herring, because Wallace is never in any of the scenes where the were-rabbit shows up. But as a kid, I was just like, oh my god, what a twist. Gromit then lassos onto the rabbit, so he doesn't get away, but he loses it just as he gets back to the house. And I love the bit where the car shakes like a dog to shake all the dirt off. Wallace and Gromit think it's Hutch is the were-rabbit, so Gromit builds a new, stronger cage for Hutch. Classic Wallace runs off while Gromit solves everything. And this was kind of a phase in like the 90s with like kids TV shows and stuff. There was a show I loved called Hong Kong Phooey, which was about this police dog who at night moonlighted as this superhero who beat up bad guys and stuff, but actually he was useless and the cat was the one who did everything, but the dog was so busy doing all of his kung fu that he didn't notice the cat saved the day. Also, the cat was called Spot and it had stripes, and I thought that was the funniest thing ever as a kid. Anyway, back to Wallace and Gromit. Gromit finds out that Wallace is the monster, whilst Wallace flirts with the lady. Wallace getting hot and bothered when she's fondling her melons is great subtle adult humour that I definitely missed as a kid. She also tells him that she can call him Totty. If you're not from the UK, you might not know this, but Totty is old British slang for a hot woman. Gromit stops Wallace from eating all of her vegetables, but on the way home they get stopped by a fallen tree. The rich lord shows up and tries to fight Wallace just as he turns into a were-rabbit. All the rabbits howling is great because, yeah, in all the werewolf movies you have the wolves howling with the werewolf, and it's just funny to imagine a rabbit howling away. The rich guy goes to the vicar for help and gets special bullets, and the vicar says, "Everything you need is in this book." And the rich lord's like, "Nun wrestling?" And it's just like, that's a great joke. I also love the bit where they use thunder to emphasize them saying they need a bullet, because again, in the UK we don't really have guns and stuff much, and the rich lord getting fed up with it and just closing the curtains, which is just, yeah, very good, because that's like the standard trope in movies of being like, yes, I need drama, thunder, like every chance. Very well done. Wallace and Gromit are having breakfast, and Wallace won't listen that he's the rabbit. Hutch has also turned into Wallace, as we find out. The poor people confront Lady Tottington about how the rabbit is still out there. One of the guys says, even the Great Duck Plague couldn't stop it. The vegetable festival. I think I know something else that might stop that festival now. Lady Tottington comes by as Wallace starts to change. The Lord shows up to try and kill Wallace. Gromit gets him out of the house by using the female rabbit suit. And I love how this movie kind of uses the intro song and remixes it in different ways. So here they kind of use like a slowed down sexy version of the intro song, which is very, very clever. The Lord shoots the rabbit and everyone celebrates. Plot twist, he shot Gromit's suit instead. We see the town at the carnival until the policeman accidentally tells everyone that the rabbit is still alive. Turns out Hutch is in Wallace's bed, just doing Wallace things, so Gromit uses this to escape from his cage. The Lord tries to lure Wallace / the rabbit and kill him. Gromit and Hutch show up to save Wallace, but as they do, Wallace hears the Lord being rude to the ladies, so he goes to save her. The sign being changed from gardening supplies to angry mob supplies is great. And also you see Gromit's vegetable getting destroyed as he's using it as bait. As an adult, this is really sad to watch, but as a kid, it was great because now no one has to eat it. Wallace takes Lady Tottington to the roof while the Lord tries to chase him. Gromit steals a plane from a kid's ride to get the roof, but is chased by the Lord's dog in British and German World War II planes. This is great. Again, like, as a kid, I was like, I don't really get it, but, you know, red is evil and British is good. And the vicar pointing to the Lord hanging from the roof by his trousers and going, "Beware the moon," as his butt's hanging out. Wallace is running away from the Lord, and someone says there might be a large rabbit dropping, which is just hilarious. There's so many good jokes in this movie. Gromit's plane runs out of money, so him and the dog have to stop fighting to put money in it so that it keeps moving, which is just like, yeah, as a kid I definitely wasn't expecting that, and even as an adult, like, I can't think of many other movies that have done something like that in a fight where they're just like, there's been a few, I imagine probably like Jackie Chan movies, where they stop mid-fight and be like, okay, we need to do this thing so then we can carry on fighting. The Lord shoots Wallace, but Gromit stops the bullets mid-air. Apparently Gromit's plane can fly faster than the bullet somehow. It made sense as a kid, but not so much as an adult. Wallace jumps off the roof to catch Gromit and stops him from dying, but Wallace is injured, and it's so sad that even the rabbits show up to mourn him. It's okay though, Gromit brings him back from the dead with smelly cheese. Fun fact about this cheese is called Stinking Bishop cheese. It's a real type of cheese, and at the time there was only one company that made this type of cheese, and because of this movie, the number of orders they had increased by 500%. Now you can buy it from like all sorts of people, but this was kind of like the early days of the internet, so it was difficult to get like from like different suppliers and stuff. We have a happy ending as Lady Tottington decides to turn her house into a rabbit sanctuary. So yeah, that's Wallace and Gromit. I've got a few other trivia about the movie. I didn't realize this movie won an Oscar for Best Animated Movie in 2006. It's definitely proof that Kubo and the Two Strings should have got an Oscar for Best Animated Movie and not Zootopia. Not that I'm bitter. Some behind the scenes trivia. On average, they could record 3 seconds of the movie a day. So again, that goes back to how it would have been really easy to like place subtle jokes in the background. Because it takes so long, they spend so much time with these scenes, then yeah, they could like quite easily slip a joke in like in the background. Like things like if you look at paintings and like newspapers in it, like and lots of titles of shops and stuff, they have lots of jokes. Like for instance, I didn't spot this, but apparently at one point Wallace is reading a magazine called A Up, which is a parody of Hello Magazine. If you're not from the UK, A Up is a greeting in the north of England. It's basically like saying hello. There's also a blink and you'll miss it antique shop called Rare Bits, which is a funny name for an antique shop, but also there's a traditional Welsh dish known as Welsh rarebit where the main meat in it is rabbit. So it's like a multi-level joke that works in this. Like, it's very clever. But again, like, blink and you'll miss it. Lady Tottington got her name from an area in Manchester where one of the directors grew up called Tottington, and it's often shortened to Totty. Like if you're from the area, you'd be like, oh, I'm from Totty. And I guess it's just a happy coincidence that it's also a British slang word. I really like the Wallace and Gromit movies, but I know the people who make them have had problems because they haven't been able to adapt with current movies. Like the Wallace and Gromit movies were really good because there was nothing else like them in like the late 90s, but now there's all sorts of other stuff, and because a lot of them are blending stop motion and animation, whereas they've kind of stuck with stop motion. Like Leica, who made Kubo and the Two Strings, Coraline, The Missing Link, they've made these big stories, whereas Aardman, who make Wallace and Gromit, have tried to tell a few other stories, but they haven't really worked. Like they did one about pirates that was kind of they've also done one about early caveman, which I haven't seen, but it's not supposed to be that great. Chicken Run and Shaun the Sheep have been their only other successes, really, and Shaun the Sheep came from Wallace and Gromit anyway, and kind of everything's about Shaun the Sheep now. Although, when I was researching them for this episode, I found out that Chicken Run 2 is supposed to come out this year, so look out for that. I would be very surprised if it's going to be delayed by much, because, like I said, when they're making these movies, they can only do about 3 seconds a day, so it means most of the filming must have been done at this point. They were making it for a few years at this point, so even with the whole coronavirus crisis, it should be okay, like, to come out this year, so we should wait and see. But yeah, that's Wallace and Gromit. Feel free to let me know on Instagram or Facebook or wherever what you think of Wallace and Gromit. I don't know if this is a movie that you grew up with where you were, but yeah, as a British kid, this was like everywhere, like everyone watched this movie. Next episode is going to be about the Studio Ghibli movie Spirited Away. I've not really watched the Studio Ghibli movie before. I've seen Wind Rises, it's like the only one I've watched. I've seen a little bit of Spirited Away. I've seen like 5 minutes of it before. But I feel like, because Wind Rises is a documentary about how the early jet engines were, well, how the early jet planes were made. I feel like saying I've seen a Studio Ghibli movie by watching that movie is like saying I've seen Deadpool by watching an X-Men movie. Like, I feel like it's so different, despite the fact they're similar. I need to watch like a proper movie. And Wind Rises is a very good documentary, but it's just not the whole fantasy side of Studio Ghibli that they kind of use. So if you've never heard of Studio Ghibli or Spirited Away, basically Studio Ghibli is almost like Disney in Japan, and they make these movies that are like animated movies and like these big stories and with lots of interesting characters and stuff. When I was in Tokyo, if you went to any like DVD shop or anything, there would always be like the top rated movies at the moment section, and then there'd be a section next to that for Disney, and then a section next to that for Studio Ghibli movies. Like, they're so popular there, and they're kind of like cult hits in like Western countries, and a lot of them imported into English with very famous voice actors. And also there's a video floating around on the internet somewhere where Studio Ghibli have animated a 13th century scroll, I think it is. It's like the original like inspiration for like manga and stuff, and they've animated it into like a 5-second short clip, which is really cool to see, and that's to know they appreciate like their history and stuff, where they came from. But Spirited Away, I asked on Instagram and Facebook, I put up a poll to see what people recommended was the best movie to start with, and I'd heard this one and My Neighbor Totoro were like the best two, but Spirited Away got the most votes, so I went with that. So Spirited Away is something about a girl who goes on this big journey to help this spirit creature called No Face, is about all I know. I don't actually know much about this movie, but I'm excited to see what it's about. It's supposed to be really good, and I've seen the animation and stuff is very good. They put a lot of detail, again with like Wallace and Gromit, where they put lots of details into the scene. Studio Ghibli do that with their movies, so there should be a lot of things to talk about and lots of fun trivia and things, so I'm really excited. And also Netflix recently did a deal to have all the Studio Ghibli movies on there. Outside of Japan, I think it is, so they're very easy to watch at the moment. But yeah, if you want to take part in some of these polls and stuff to help choose future episodes, check out the Instagram and Facebook for the podcast, both of which are Rambling Movie Club. And if you'd like to support the podcast, there's now a Patreon where you can get bonus content in exchange for help supporting me making these podcasts. And if you don't want to give money, the other great thing you could do to support the podcast is tell a friend or a family member or someone you think would like listening to the podcast, just by sharing it through word of mouth. Like, that's a great help for me to help spread the podcast. But anyway, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.